Good afternoon and welcome everybody to our final session on our STEM Inspiration Week. My name is Julianne Law and today we're going to have Natalie Finnegan from CONCERTUS Design and Property Consultants delivering a presentation for you. Just before we get started, your cameras and your microphones have been turned off. Please keep them that way throughout the presentation. We do have a chat function available. Please use that to ask any questions and we'll be answering them at the end. And just to let you know, this session is being recorded. So Natalie, thank you very much for doing this presentation for us today, and over to you.
Thank you very much, Julianne. Hello everyone, hopefully you can all hear me, but do yell up in chat if I'm too quiet for you and I'll try and speak a little bit louder. My name's Natalie Finnegan. I'm the Principal Quantity Surveyor and Project Manager for CONCERTUS Design and Property Consultants. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit today about quantity surveying and maths in construction. You may or may not know what quantity surveying is. So hopefully, I thought we might start with a little bit of a question and just speak to your teachers who hopefully have access to the chat function and let them know what you think a quantity surveyor does. Now I'll come back and have a look at what your answers are in a little bit, and hopefully Julianne will be able to tell me who said what, so we can have a bit of a chat about that. But I thought if it's just me talking to you for half an hour, it'll get very boring very quickly. So it'd be nice to have some interaction from you and find out what you guys think. Now, a little bit about me. I was born in Lowestoft and I grew up in the area of Suffolk doing all the things that children normally do: dance, play with pets, and went to school. Not really thinking a lot about what I would do when I grew up. I thought maybe I'd be a teacher, maybe, but really didn't know. I ended up going to university and I studied economics with accountancy, still not really knowing what I wanted to do with my life, but thinking that a good education would give me a decent chance for a career when I finally made up my mind. So when I went to university, I didn't come from a rich family, so I had to work my way through. And one day I got a call asking me if I'd be willing to work on construction, being warned it would be with a bunch of men and next to a muddy field. And I got all of these images in my head about what it was going to be like. But I needed the money, so I said yes. What I ended up seeing was completely different to what I expected. We had a lovely site set up and it was two-story, very much like this image. There was a whole group of people who were working together to build something quite spectacular. This final image in the middle is Corton Wastewater Treatment Centre near Lowestoft, which was a £26 million build. And that was my first ever construction site. Yes, it did get muddy. Lots of people lost boots in the mud and small items of plant, but it was great fun and it was really lovely to see something being built out of that mud that would benefit the local community. But I didn't start off on this project as a quantity surveyor. I started off as an admin assistant. So I did scanning letters into their electronic document management system. I printed drawings, I folded them up for all the different design teams. After a while, I was asked to help out in the accounts department, matching invoices to delivery notes and making sure we were paying people as we should. I was meant to be there for 8 weeks over summer and I ended up being there for 2 years. During that time, I got to see what a quantity surveyor did and what they got paid, and decided I'd found my new career. So after I graduated, I wrote letters to 40 or 50 contracting companies and pretty much begged for an opportunity to join them and see if there was a career there that would suit me. Luckily, one of the people that actually responded was called Kier Construction, and they let me interview for a graduate quantity surveying job. 2 incredibly long and tough interviews later, they took a risk on me and employed me as one of 100 new graduates that joined the company, where they then retrained me to become a quantity surveyor. So I asked a little question earlier about what you think a quantity surveyor does, and hopefully some of you might be able to have answered that. Julianne, has anybody spoken up in chat?
Yeah, so we have one answer.
Okay,
and they survey quantities of the things they build.
quite right. So somebody has that spot on as part of what we do. So believe it or not, I asked some of my colleagues this where I worked, because not everybody, even working in construction, knows what a quantity surveyor does. So we asked this at work and we got a whole range of answers. And these are some of what we got told. That they thought a quantity surveyor were caffeine and sugar-filled number monkeys. Very true. We did have a secret pot of chocolate in our office that we kept to keep us going. And we do deal with a lot of numbers. We apparently drain the fun out of designing. I'd like to think that one isn't true, but my architects tell me it's quite boring building what I tell them they can afford. We count with our fingers. Yes, sometimes that helps. And even our toes if we run out of fingers. We exist only to tinker around on Excel like a child on Candy Crush. I must confess that all quantity surveyors love a good Excel document and spreadsheet. But some of the more sensible answers were, we price the elements and all the details involved in a project to ensure it's within budget. You're then involved in ensuring the project keeps to that budget throughout its life cycle. We have books that tell us how much things cost, and we look at what's going into building and add up the cost of the building. Apparently, with the construction industry's equivalent to a Premier League footballer when it comes to the salary, and I hate to disillusion you, that one's not true. But we do pull together all the bills of quantities, which is a list of quantities of what makes up a building for major projects. We measure projects, we do feasibility sites, studies, site visits with projects on site to make sure that we check valuations are correct, etc., etc. So, as your next question, and have a little bit of a think about this, with what I've just told you, what math skills do you think a quantity surveyor would need to be able to do some of those jobs? So again, speak out to your teachers, get them to put it in chat, what your answers are, and hopefully when we come to the answer slide, Julianne will have more than one answer to give me. While you think about that, I'm going to tell you a little bit more about what a QS actually does, and we'll see if anybody can guess the right math skills. So we manage the financial, so the money side, and the contractual, the legal side of construction projects. So it's a bit like being an accountant, but accountants working in construction, which I think makes it a lot more interesting. Nowadays, we get involved in everything from providing estimates, so pretty much intelligent guesses about how much a project costs. And sometimes that's when there's little more than a very vague idea of what a client wants to build. And we do that to check that the client can actually afford to build what they want. We work with architects and designers to develop a design in line with those budgets. We tender, which means get quotes for the projects, which means getting, and then allows a contractor to be employed to build the projects. We help manage variations, which is the changes, on site to help keep a project to budget. But we're not doing all this behind a desk, and that was one of the main things I wanted when I was younger, is not to be stuck behind a desk all day. We get out on sites, we meet people, we value the works physically on a construction site. This means having a look at what has been built, how big it is, how much there is of it, and then deciding how much the contractor should be paid based on the quotation that they gave us. But we don't measure everything on a piece of paper using a ruler, out on site using a tape measure. Nowadays, there's a variety of technology, including computer software, to measure and cost the project. You can see on the pictures, you've got laser levels, you've got rulers, your pencils, your scale rules, all sorts of things, and Excel, which is my personal favourite. Aside from the maths, which hopefully some of you are having a think about what we actually need, you need a lot of other skills to be a quantity surveyor. Maths is just one part of it. The skills that you need are things like communication, problem solving, logical thinking, being able to work in a team, being able to make decisions, and the key one probably is negotiation. Somebody will want you to pay them a lot more for doing something than what you actually want to pay them. So to being able to chat with them and persuade them that they're going to do a job for you for a lot cheaper than what they originally want to, that's a great skill to be able to have as a quantity surveyor. So if you enjoy solving puzzles and working with people, this might well be a career that you'd really enjoy. But obviously the maths does come into it, because this is about math skills and quantity surveying. So if you can tell out your teachers what math skills you think a quantity surveyor would need, hopefully Julianne will be able to tell me what the answers have been.
So we do have one, and so we've got math skills are going to be multiply, divide, add, subtract, ratios, gradients of lines, and that's from 9A at Ashcroft High.
Well, 9A from Ashcroft High, whoever gave that as an answer, I think maybe needs to come join us as a quantity surveying in my team, because pretty much you've got most of those right. So the maths that you need are generally the basic ones. It's your adding up, you're taking away, multiplication and division, percentages. So, you know, of 100 meters squared worth of field, you've done 50% of it. So you know you've done 50 meters squared of that field already. Those sort of percentages. Being able to work out your areas of rectangles, squares, circles, half circles, all those sorts of things. Your perimeters. And the best thing is, we get to use a calculator, our Excel or our software, to be able to help us do these calculations. But being able to have an understanding of what the answer should be, because you're halfway good at maths, is really beneficial. But it doesn't need to be the complicated maths like partial differentiation or simultaneous equations for this career. But you do have to enjoy playing with numbers, as we do a lot of spreadsheets and a lot of calculator work. So as the next question, how much do you think it costs to build a new school? Now this is quite a difficult question, so we'll give you some time to think about it at the end, but have a think and then let your teachers know so that they can put it in chat, and Julianne can tell me at the end what the answers have come up with. I'll be interested to see how close some of you get. Now, when I joined Kier Construction as a quantity surveyor, I joined as a junior. I ended up being 13 years with Kier, and I worked from junior to intermediate to a full quantity surveyor. After 13 years, I left and joined my current company, which is CONCERTUS, as a senior quantity surveyor. From there, my career has just sort of rocketed, really. Shortly after joining, I was asked to help run the team, which was 4 QSs at the time, as a deputy head of the department. 18 months after that, the company changed its structure, and I got asked to take over the team as a whole. Since then, we've grown a lot. We now have 8 quantity surveyors in my team, everything from trainee to senior level, and the whole stretch in between. And I get to oversee all of them. I then got an opportunity to merge my QS team with the project management team, and I now run 16 professional people of various ages and experiences in producing construction projects. That's everything from recruitment, so I get to interview, read CVs, decide who gets an opportunity to join us. I then get to do all their performance evaluations, decide who gets bonuses, who doesn't, who gets promoted, who doesn't. I also get to oversee all of their projects, and I'm the point of contact that they come to ask questions if they come across something they've never come before. And it's great because you get to train people and see them come on and develop. And you know, after 18 years in the industry now, part some of that knowledge onto the new generation coming through and watch them learn and grow using those math skills that we were talking about earlier. But what does that actually mean in terms of projects? What it means is I've been involved in tourist centres, care homes, business units, health centres, fire and police stations, estate management, and lots of schools. And the project that came up last, which is all the kids in front of Digger, is one of my current projects, which is the Bridge School in Ipswich, and we're due to complete that in January. And I'm not going to tell you how much it's cost because it'll give you a little bit of a clue for the next question. So you get to work on a whole range of different buildings. It's not the same. Every project is different. Every project has its own challenges. And every project you get to see something grow and build, which, for me personally, gives me a great sense of achievement and ability to use my skills for good. So, how much do you think it costs to build a new school?
So we've had a variety of answers from 1.5 million, we've got a 2 million, and between 10 and 15 million, and that's from Ashcroft High again.
Well, quite frankly, no one is wrong, because the answer is it depends. It depends on the size of the school and where it's located and whether it has any specialist requirements. Now, specialist requirements could be special educational needs, where they need specific rooms built to help create good learning environments. It could be specialist teaching provisions. So what you need if you are going to teach lots of science lessons may be slightly different than if you're a sports teaching school. So your different lessons need different provisions. A small school, so something like a 30-place preschool, could be as little as £500,000. If you're looking at a 210-place preschool or primary school, you're looking at a few million. If you're looking at the through school, which is a preschool, a primary school and a secondary school, all being built on the same site, you're talking tens of millions. As a company, we've done minor refurbishment projects for a few £1,000s, some extension works for a few £100,000, to new build schools which cost over £20 million. The Bridge School, which is the one I showed you earlier with the digger with all the kids, that one is a specialist educational needs secondary school, and it is around £9 million worth of build cost. So that's a little bit about what I do and some of the projects I've worked on. So do you guys have any questions that you would like to ask me?
So we do have one question,
Okay.
and it's do they make it expensive on purpose to be paid more? So I'm guessing that's about quantity surveyors and whether they make a build more expensive to be paid more.
I'd love to say that the more expensive the project, the more I get paid, and I have an influence on that. But no, unfortunately, we don't. Actually, quantity surveyors, as a breed of human being, tend to quite get a lot of enjoyment for making projects as cheap as we can make them. So yes, these numbers do seem quite expensive, but believe it or not, some of the Suffolk schools are some of the most cost-effective ones in the country, because I've done the analysis to prove it. But it would be nice if I could make something more expensive and get paid more money for it. But no, your wages is nothing to do with how expensive your jobs is.
Excellent, thank you, Natalie. A couple more questions. It's a good one from Helen. What's your average day like? I can imagine it's quite diverse.
So it will change depending on what level of quantity surveying you are. So yeah, my days can consist of putting on my site boots and going and having a walk around a building site, having a talk to the contractors about how things are going, what they're doing, how the progress of the site's going, looking at, if I'm project management, looking at programs, if I'm quantity surveying, having a look at how much of things are built. I could have a full day of discussing project opportunities and providing pricing our services, so putting a bid in to try and win work for my company, or interviewing people for new opportunities that we've got where we want to bring people into work in the company. Even when I was a junior surveyor, there was no such thing as a typical day. I was based out on site when I first started, and some days you would have meetings about negotiation of how much something would cost. Other days it would be out on site in the snow, helping engineers set out to make sure the building was built in the right place. Other days it would be taking lots of photos to show how the project was being built and what was going on. Other days it would be purely sat at the computer checking how much people were wanting to be paid and whether that was reasonable or not. So one of the great things about quantity surveying is you get a lot of variety in what you do. And I want to say the older you get and the more experience you get, the greater that variety could be from the type of project you work with different people. And again, that's one of the things I loved about quantity surveying is, and I don't mean this to sound rude to anybody, but the thought of working with the same people day in, day out and not having different people to talk to. I love the social side of construction sites. I loved going and working with different people, meeting different people. You get an opportunity to do that because every project could last 5 months, could last 2 years, but there's always the next project. There's always different people. There's always different subcontractors. There's always different challenges, always different clients. So you get to meet a huge range of people in the job.
Great, thanks for that, Natalie. And one more question that's come in. How long does it take to build a school?
Again, it depends on the size of the school and what problems, what challenges that school has. So the Bridge School, which I spoke about earlier, which is my main project at the moment, we started building that in April last year. We've had to do some massive groundwork. So we had to completely resculpt the ground to be able to build this school. The actual main building was finished in September. So in theory, that would have taken 1.5 years to build. However, there's an existing school on the site which now needs to get demolished and turned into some fantastic outside spaces for the children to enjoy. So now that's what we're doing. So overall, that project will have taken around the 18-month to 2-year mark, depending on how it goes. Other projects, you could be in and out in 6 weeks. If it's a small refurb and you just need to move a few classrooms around to be able to help give it a bit of a lift and allow some additional teaching spaces, there's projects that can be done in 6 to 8 weeks. And again, that's one of the things I love. You never hit the same project twice.
Great, thank you so much. If anybody does have any other questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. But there's no other questions at the moment.
Okay, so one of the things I did do before doing this presentation is I gave some schools, your schools, some exercises and ideas for tasks that can be done, which are very similar to the sort of tasks and thought processes that I do at work regularly. So if any of the teachers have any questions on that, I'm happy to answer them too. Deathly silence.
Yeah, no more. There's no more questions coming through at the moment.
Okay. Well, that's everything about really being a quantity surveyor and the maths that you need to use in it. So unless there's any other questions that come through, I'll quite happily let you get back to your class day.
So we've still got quite a bit of time, everybody. So if there are any questions, put them in the chat. Natalie's here and she'll be happy to answer them for you. Oh, we've got one come in. Who decides how big a school is?
So that's decided by the client, which is normally either, if you're an academy, it's the academy, or it could be the local county council. So we work for Suffolk County Council, Derbyshire County Council, Central Beds. It ultimately depends on how many pupils need to be taught. So if it's only 30 pupils, you'll only have a small extension. If it's 210 pupils that need a place to go to school, it'll be a certain size, and that's all decided by the Department for Education, who give you a list of how much space each pupil is allowed for what that school's required. We then try and fit that list of spaces and sizes and rooms that you need to be able to be taught into a building as compact and efficient as possible.
Great, thank you. We've got a couple more questions. Do you get to decide which projects you do? Has your job changed during the pandemic?
Okay, so deciding which project I do, nowadays, yes, I do. With my team, I try and give them some say in what projects that they do. If it's something that they've got experience in and I know they love, and everyone ends up with a sort of favourite type of project. My favourite types of project has always been education from right in the start. I've loved those jobs that are giving back to the community. I've also really enjoyed the health projects that I've done, you know, helping expand Ipswich Hospital to provide an oncology unit was one of my projects previously. It's those sort of community projects that I really enjoy. Now that I get to allocate who does what work, I get to pick what projects I do. I would say that means I can give myself all the best ones, but I tend to give myself all the ones that nobody else wants. So there's probably moral in there that I need to allocate things better. But ultimately, no, as a business, you get a load of projects. If there's not one that you particularly love, you've still got to deliver those projects as part of being a professional quantity surveyor. You don't always get to choose. But where I can, I try and let people do something that they love. My job has changed a little bit during the pandemic. I used to go out to site an awful lot more. So I don't get to put my site boots on quite as frequently as I do. I'm sort of tied to the computer a little bit more. I used to see all of my team, I said 16 of them now, and I used to sort of walk around the office and have a chat with them and check in with them. And nowadays that's all done through Teams. But as a basic principle of what I do, no, things, even with the pandemic, we have to be very careful about the social distancing and making sure we're building the schools in a safe way for the guys that are working on site and the students and the teachers and everybody that's involved in the project. But things still need to be built. We're just finding slightly different ways of doing it, and we're doing more of it online and through things like this with the video chats and the conferences.
Thank you. And one question that I'm sure everybody is wanting to know, what is the general pay of people in the industry?
So that depends on your level and your education. We take people in CONCERTUS from A levels and we sponsor them through university. So the pays for that tends to be obviously a lot lower than somebody who's got 20 years experience. When I worked at Kier, I helped recruitment there. It was paid slightly more for graduates. So the graduates we were employing 5 years ago was around the £19,000 mark. I think if you come straight from A level, you're talking more basic hourly wage, because again, we pay for the education side. So my team is currently sponsoring 3 or 4 people through their university degrees or professional qualifications at different levels. If you end up working in London, you can pretty much double anything that you'd work in Suffolk, and everyone goes, yay, I'm going to work in London. And then you realise that the reason you get paid twice as much is because you take an hour to get down there and an hour to get back every day, and so your days are a lot longer. For somebody of my level, you're talking somewhere between £40,000 and £60,000 a year, depending on the size of the company, depending on your success as a company. Ultimately, you can get bonuses on top of that. When I was a quantity surveyor, as a bog standard, not a senior, but just a quantity surveyor, it was in the region of 30,000. So it increases as your experience grows, as you get older, etc., etc.
Great, thank you. What's the biggest project you've worked on, Natalie?
Personally, aside from the bridge, which is this £9 million school, which is the one that I'm leading on as a project manager, so that's my biggest project as a project manager. As a quantity surveyor, it was a £17 million library extension for the University of Essex in Colchester. So that was my biggest one there, and it was a 5-storey high concrete frame building. And if I tell you at this point that I'm absolutely terrified of heights, that was probably the scariest building I've ever been up. I just didn't like being that high up on a building, but it's part of what you had to do. But those were the biggest projects I've been on.
Great. How long does it take to make a standard house? Is a good question.
That is a good question, and this is a bit where I have to confess, I don't know. I've never actually built a house. So I've built business units and all libraries and all sorts of things there, but I've never built a house. But it will be dependent on who's building it. If you're building these big housing estates by people like Bovis Homes, where they build hundreds and hundreds of houses at one time, all of the same sort of construction, you can build them really quick. If you're just building one house on its own and you're managing it yourself, it can take a fair amount of time. So you're potentially talking at 3 or 4 months for Bovis Homes as one unit, but 6 or 7 months, I would guess, and it is a guess, if you're building your own.
Great, thank you. I'm sure you've touched upon this, but how long does it take to build a school? So obviously that's going to depend on the requirements and how big it is, I guess. And
Yes,
how much? Go on.
I was going to say it's pretty much anything between a few months and a couple of years, depending on the size of the school.
Great, thank you. Someone's asked, what is TJ? Not quite sure what they mean by that.
No, I
if
don't.
ask that question, if they want to elaborate on that, that would be great. And a bit about yourself. What's the best project you've worked on?
I think my best project, I must admit, is the one I did at Ipswich Hospital, which was the Macmillan Centre for cancer patients. And it was what they called an APU, an aseptic pharmacy unit. So it's where they make the drugs for cancer patients and then actually treat them. So it was an outpatient, what they call an outpatient unit. And it was knowing that what I was helping create would help make people better. I was never going to be a doctor. That wasn't ever that is where my skills were. But to have the opportunity to help do things like that actually helps make people better, make people's lives better. Schools are the other things. You know, I absolutely love building schools. The idea that I can help create spaces in my own way. I can't lay bricks. Now, I can't put up steelwork. Well, I can, but badly. You'd never want me to actually physically build your school. But the fact that I can help build these great spaces for people to learn, these great environments so that children have a better chance to learn and grow and live up to their expectations and their dreams and desires for their future, that's a great thing for me, somebody like me, to be able to do, because I wouldn't physically be able to do it, but I'm great with numbers. I love numbers. I always enjoyed playing with numbers. So to be able to do something I love in a way that helps give back to the community is a real blessing for me.
Right. Sorry, somebody's asked, have you ever built a football stadium?
No.
Would you?
Yeah, I'd build anything. I love a new challenge. So, you know, I've had experience building all sorts of things, but no, never football stadiums. But yeah, I'd give that a go. That would be quite interesting.
That'd be quite a fun project to work on.
Yeah.
I've got a quick question, Natalie, if you don't mind me asking. Sure. Does your job allow travel? So have you ever travelled outside of the country to build anything?
I haven't, but I have had lots of people who have. Personally, I'm a single mum, so I've got a son means that I don't get to necessarily travel around the world and do these things. But I've had friends that have gone out to the Middle East and built airports, and out to Australia and built out there. So there is the opportunity to, if that's what interests you. And it is one of those skills that every country in the world builds things. That's what we do as human beings. We construct buildings. So yeah, if you want to travel around and do that, there's every opportunity to do that in this career.
Great. One thing, what's the one thing you would love to build that you haven't built already?
Oh, that's a hard one.
That's a really good question.
It is a really good question. I'd actually really love to build something like a science park, a really high-tech one. So, you know, it's one with all the latest technology where they do lots of whiz-bang things and it all's very exciting and new technology. Where it's just a massive wow, but then again still has that education side and that given to the community side. Quite frequently the sort of downside of what I do is county councils, they don't have a lot of money and they've got to spread it around a lot of schools. So it's always trying to make things as cost efficient as possible. So I'd love to build something where money was no object and we could just absolutely blow the budget and build some exciting stuff.
Great, thank you. Well, we are running out of time, everybody. So we are going to wrap it up there. Thank you for all your questions. Sorry if we've not got time to answer them all today. But Natalie, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a really interesting session.
And thank you for all the questions. That's been great. Thank you, guys.
That's great. Just to everybody, or the teachers that are joining us, there is a link in the chat for a feedback form. We would really appreciate your feedback on the session today. So if you could just take the time to copy that link and provide us with some feedback, that would be great. So thank you all. Great session. Cheers.